Hello everyone, it's Dr. Creekmer. Some of you had questions regarding the lesson plan, and so what I'm going to do is go through and talk you through the development of a lesson plan, and we're going to do it in segments. For some reason this camera isn't working, but you can hear me, so that's really all you need. Be sure to fill in where it says teacher candidate. Obviously that is you, the specific grade level that you're going to be working with. Let me put this out there. It is a little bit more difficult to develop a lesson plan absent of a textbook for that chosen grade. However, I always inform my students that the internet is your friend. Once you have selected your standard, it is easy to go from there. Why? Because any unit, any course is going to be based off of standards. Standards are what determine the curriculum. With that being said, decide what grade you want to work with and go from there as far as selecting your standards. Just make sure that you are within the grade band that accompanies the certification that you desire to achieve. For example, if you want to teach secondary mathematics, then you would choose somewhere in between 6th and 12th grade. For the purpose of this class, you're only going to have to do one lesson plan. And just to make sure that you're clear, you're not turning in 5 or 6 lesson plans. You're turning in one lesson plan in segmented parts. And so at the very end of the term, you will turn in your final completed lesson plan, not a new one, but the revisions from each of those parts that I have graded, all revised and turned in as one. Let's go on to where it says date. You never want to put a specific date, especially get in the practice of doing that, because once you actually start teaching, your dates can get crazy. And so the best thing to do is put day 1. Generally, you will end up doing 3 lesson plans to develop a unit. So day 1, day 2, day 3 is sufficient. Where it says unit, for example, if you were teaching secondary biology, that's 6th through 12th grade certification, you would only teach biology in 7th grade. So we'll say 7th and then 9th through 12th, either way. And you decided to talk about the respiratory system. You chose a particular standard that talked about the body systems, and you focus in on the respiratory system. Well, what would your unit title be? Your unit title would be body systems. Or you could even call it respiratory system. And then beside that, after the / where it asks for a subject, you would simply put biology. Be sure that when you're filling in your lesson plan, that everything that you put into the lesson plan is typed into the white area, either to the right or to the bottom of the blue box prompts. You don't want to fill anything into the blue areas because it could become hidden within the information or the prompts or the questions that are already there. Let's take a look at the central focus of the lesson. This is going to be some bold statement, some grand idea that basically encapsulates your entire lesson. It could even be placed in the form of a question, some question that really makes your students think. You don't want to pose a question like, let me see. Let's go back to the respiratory system. And you don't want to say, how many organs are there in the respiratory system? That's not a good central focus question. A central focus question would have, like I said, would be something that would cause your students to think deeply about the given content. Down where it says national state learning standards, you would go to the georgiastandards.org website, select your subject, then select your grade level, and then determine which standard you want to use. Copy and paste that standard into your lesson plan. From there, you also need to select a substandard. The substandards are identified using a lowercase alphabet. You only need one. Just a little tidbit going forward. Anytime you have to create a unit, meaning that you have 3 or more lesson plans, you would keep the same standard, but your substandard could possibly change. Another hint too, if you want to, not if you want to, but when developing your central focus, read your standard and see what the standard is saying. Either create a question from there or create a bold statement from there. Let's go on to where it's 1.3 context for learning. I'm still under the section where it says planning. Here you would discuss students that have different disabilities in the classroom. And we won't, I would say to leave that section alone for now until you get into, I think it is 5130, when you would start talking about students with exceptionality. So let's skip that part and we'll scroll on down to 1.4, learning objectives. Here you will have anywhere from 2 to 4 objectives, and they will start off with students will be able to, or students will be able, or students will know, excuse me. Those are the goals for what your students should know or should be able to do by the time you finish teaching this lesson. Next, you would have the teacher notes section. All you would simply place in that teacher notes section is a quick statement to say which lesson this is in your unit. For example, you're not creating a unit for this class, so you would automatically put that this is the first lesson in your unit. Had you been creating 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lessons after the first lesson, you know, the numbers would just continue on. So however many lessons you're creating, and so you would just simply state that there. This is the opening lesson, this is the concluding lesson, or this is the third lesson. Very simple. Just type that in. Under 1.5, academic language, your key vocabulary, that's simple. What are the vocabulary terms that you're going to utilize to teach this lesson? Under functions, and this is an area where a lot of students do struggle. All you need is one word. One word that is going to drive your instruction. For example, you can use words such as explain, clarify, describe, analyze, show evidence. These terms are action verbs generally found in your standards that you will use throughout the learning process to help your students gain an understanding of your content. Next to that, to the right, it says language support. You would simply list the activities that would allow your students to demonstrate their understanding using or implementing that language function. So for example, let's say I chose explain as my language function. Under language support, I will talk about an assignment where students would have to explain a given concept to demonstrate their understanding. These can be activities that are also found below in the instruction portion of your lesson plan, but I will talk more about that in the next video or audio. 1.6, instructional materials, equipment, and technology. Here you will simply list anything you would use for the success of this lesson to allow your students to learn. You would put, if you're using a Promethean board, PowerPoint presentation, pens, pencils, markers, crayons, any of that would be listed there, just to provide an idea of what preparation you would put forth so that students can actually participate in activities and assessments to learn the given concept. 1.7, grouping. I can't recall if this portion is on the lesson plan template that you have, but if it is there, you would simply talk here about how you would group your students to increase learning. Sometimes students are grouped because of behavior. Take the time to look at your textbook, your required textbook by Boric, and he talks about grouping there. Effective methods of grouping to aid in teaching your students to collaborate for a productive learning environment. I will talk to you all soon again concerning the instruction portion of the lesson plan.